half an hour. We're now joined by West Virginia Director of Athletics and a great friend of the show in Wren Baker. Paul Catalina with me, David Smoak. Well, how you doing, Wren?
I'm doing great, guys. It's beautiful here in West Virginia, and so last week, and you all appreciate this, and as somebody who grew up in Oklahoma and spent the last 6+ years in Texas and have followed your weather these last few weeks, we had a heat advisory last week, and I looked at my phone to see what the temperature was going to be, and the high was expected to be 89. So that tells you about summers in West Virginia. It's going great. Our team is working and looking good. All of our fall sports teams have started practice, and so we're just excited to get the school year underway.
With the 89-degree temperature, that was a shot across our bow, and now I am in the Ray Anderson. No,
actually, I'm the exact opposite. I will absolutely come to Morgantown.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been thinking about it more since you said that. Like, it just, man.
80, and I bet Greenbrier is probably just gorgeous. Oh, good Lord.
Well, and here we consistently get a lot of rain, so things just stay so green throughout the year. And this is my first summer to spend here, and so we haven't been here. But and Heather and I certainly love Texas and Oklahoma, and that's where all of our family is. But we've been so pleasantly surprised with how wonderful the summers are here, and there's just so much to see and do outdoors, whether it's hiking or kayaking or river floats, whatever it is you want to do. And so it is a great place to visit. Now you draw those later games in the schedule. Once it turns cold, it's probably not as enjoyable for some of the visiting teams. But if you get those early September and early October games, it's a beautiful place to visit.
So, Wren, just to get it out of the way, I mean, Ray Anderson made the comment that he made. You guys have talked. Everybody's made up now. They're members of the conference moving forward. But how do you, because these things do pop up from time to time in college sports. Like, how did you deal with it? And how do how did you get to the point where you guys kind of move past it?
I didn't get real upset by it. We do enough of these interviews, and probably all of us have had a comment here or there. Sometimes we're trying to be funny or say something in jest, and it doesn't land quite like you would think it would. So I didn't. I wasn't ever angry about it necessarily. But if you come to West Virginia, one thing that people will learn about West Virginians is they love this place very dearly, and they want other people to give it a chance. And and so when someone says something like that, and I shared this with Ray, I said probably of any fan base, ours would probably take that most personal, because it is a place that's very endeared to the hearts of West Virginians, and they don't feel like there's probably as much appreciation from others outside the state as what maybe there should be. And so I made the tweet that I did, which I think most people read it to be aimed at that comment, and in full transparency, it was. But I do tweet a lot about, in my time here, West Virginia, and just the beauty of it. I had not spent much time here, and I've been blown away at just how gorgeous every corner of the state is as I've gotten out to meet people. And so, my tweet was really more aimed at showing some affirmation for our fan base of just how special that this place is for everybody who gives it a chance. And so I got a great call from Ray on Monday. We know each other a little bit. We've met and talked some over the years. One of Arizona State's best donors is a good friend of mine, lives about a mile from me there in Argyle. And so he was very kind and gracious and apologized and even told me that the person that he got in the most trouble from over that was his wife, that she got on him a little bit. So I told him I'm used to a wife that's applying discipline. That happens a lot at the Baker house as well. So we had a great visit, and I told him, I said, hey, he said, I'm sure when I come there I'll get a hard time. I said, that's the thing about West Virginians, man. They're going to want to show you so much how great it is here, that you probably need to start thinking now about how you're going to get all your pepperoni rolls, because you're going to get a bunch of them delivered to you. So, and that's the way that the people here are. They're just they're some of the best people you'll ever find anywhere. So it's behind us. We're excited to have Arizona State. We're excited for the future of the Big 12. Both Mac and I throughout the process were very, very much in support of both Arizona schools, and we both, Mac being from there, being an alum of Arizona, we just felt like that would be a great addition to the league. And so I'm very excited, despite the geographic challenges it could present for West Virginia. I'm very excited about what that means for the Big 12.
So I want to get to that because that was one of my questions about you suggesting or giving recommendations to others and vice versa about the travel. So has Brett Yormark or anyone from the Big 12 told you when that game at home against Arizona State's going to be in 2024?
Well, I think poetic justice would be that it's the first one right off the bat.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I know President Gee would love to host President Crow and all the folks at Arizona State as well. I think he was already sent out a letter offering his hospitality. So, we'll let the conference schedules fall like they fall, but we love to show this place off. We would love to show it off to the fans there at Arizona State and as well as Colorado, Arizona, and Utah. So we're excited to be able to extend our brand and reach, and we're also excited for our fans to get a chance to learn those other programs and get a chance to maybe see a part of the world they haven't seen before. I don't know how many of our fans make it to Utah, but Utah is also a very beautiful state. I've had a chance to go there several times over the years, and that'll be, even though it's a far trip, it'll be some great trips as we develop those rivalries.
You obviously not having been there long, but the team's been in the conference where they've had to go across a time zone every time that they've played a road game, essentially for a decade now plus. What is the research or the results tell you on how your student athletes' overall quality of life is doing that when it comes to managing being a student athlete and certain games like sports that might play 2 games a week that might have to be on the road twice and do all that? What have you seen at West Virginia of how to deal with that? Because the further west schools are going to have to deal with that in a bigger way too.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and any coach will tell you, whether it's for a conference or non-conference game, behind the scenes coaches hate crossing those time zones. It just messes with you. And so for us, I mean, we come there and let's say we play at 7:00 Central tip for basketball. That's 8 Eastern, and so we're going to be rolling in, by. It'll be 4 or 5 in the morning for a basketball game coming in like that. I mean, many times by the time I get rolled into my driveway, it was close to 4, if not a little after. And so, that you do that over and over again, it becomes tougher. Now, football, you're talking about 6 road games or 6, 9, potentially road games, sometimes 5 a year, and so it becomes a little more manageable, but it does really mess up your Sunday, and different coaches handle Sunday a little differently, and so it's interesting if you look at just about every sport we have that our win percentage and our home court home field advantage is big for everybody, but it's more pronounced here at WVU. If you look at, for instance, our basketball team's road record the last few years versus our home record, it's drastically different. So it's difficult for teams to come here, and I remind our coaches of that. I said, listen, it's difficult for us when we go on the road, but it's difficult for teams when they have to come here as well. So we got to use that as an advantage. And then we try in the sports that we can to charter when we can and charter comfortably, give the kids some room to stretch out. We try to always make sure we have Wi-Fi where they can use some of that time working on their studies. You try and take it a disadvantage and neutralize it as much as you can. The conference has also been good for us, especially in some of the Olympic sports, to try to adjust the schedules. Baseball, for instance, they start us out later than everybody else. Now, how that'll all work with the new conference, membership, we'll see. But I'll say this, the Big 12 leadership's tried to be very accommodating and understanding, and with having Cincinnati and UCF, that doesn't make things over here perfect, but at least it gives us some trips that are in our time zone.
Wren, is it also, if you look at it, it's all driven by money or TV money, and football is mainly the reason. Are you, as a college athletics professional, losing sight of some of what is athletics in a way because of the expansion of realignment?
Well, I definitely think that it's changed the dynamic of the way that conferences are in rivalries for sure. And listen, if we were to blow this thing up and start from scratch today, there's no way we would design it the way that it is. First of all, I think we would just affiliate football only and then bring everything else into conferences. And I'm not so sure we wouldn't say, hey, this would make a lot more sense to go into almost like states do their high school playoffs. Let's have districts, regionals, and areas, and that kind of stuff, and let's try and do this geographically. But there is no question that of the buckets that come into most universities, that the TV money is one of, if not the biggest, and those and that's really important. And people can we can all lament that that's where it's at, and be sad about what was lost. But there was a couple of coaches I saw that come out and kind of bash this realignment move and what it does for the student athlete experience. Well, I guarantee you those same coaches are trying to spend every dollar they can get their hands on, and so they're just as much a part of this as everybody else, because there's just an unquenchable thirst for more from a resource perspective. And when you look at leagues that you compete with and are in your region, so the SEC, the Big Ten for us as well. And they're cashing bigger checks than you are, and you're looking ahead of things and seeing that disparity growing in your fan base. When we play Kentucky in something, they want us to win. They expect us to win. But Kentucky's cashing those SEC checks, and we're not. And so those are real dynamics. They go into play, unfortunately, it has definitely caused some realignment head scratchers in terms of just the geography of it all. And I think that's unfortunate. Maybe we get to a place at some point where we do break out some of the sports away from some of the others, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to send a soccer team or a volleyball team all the way to Utah and fly over however many schools we fly over. And many times they're on commercial planes, and most of the time they're on commercial planes. And so, I think we're all aware that that's something that's on the radar screen. We need to be thinking about. We need to be talking about. It's going to be a big point of discussion, I would imagine, for us in the Big 12 as we start to talk about scheduling. But it is the byproduct of TV's not the enemy here. They're contributing hundreds of millions of dollars every year in the athletic programs. But in exchange for that, they have to have the games that are of the most value to them, and that's just part of it.
Yeah, Wren, I've asked that question to many different people, athletic directors, Linda Livingstone, presidents of universities, if that is something. And it seems like there is at least moderate, kind of common sense support for that going forward, because something you'd mentioned about flying commercially, of all the advances we've had in technology over the years and all the things that are happening, commercial flying is not getting easier. And it's probably really hard when you've got 25 athletes and 10 coaches and whoever else on a plane that, has to deal with everything else that just anybody flying has to deal with.
No, there's no question, the amount of equipment and logistics and all of that, and then you're trying to get, a lot of times athletes, they may have injuries so you're trying to get them in an exit row or an aisle seat, or sometimes they're just big kids, and so, it is pretty amazing. At North Texas, our basketball team, we chartered some, but they flew commercially some, and invariably I would get a text from a friend of mine that was on the flight with our team, and some 6'10" kid in the middle row with his legs scrunched up, and so those are hard to do, and there's a big difference between a flight that is a couple hours and a flight that's 5 hours, right? I mean that's a significant difference, and so I think it's important for us to look at, can we schedule in pods or divisions, and cut down on travel? Now you're going to hear coaches talk about, equity, and did I get all the hard teams and the other divisions easier? But that stuff tends to level out and average out over time. I mean, you look at the basketball teams that are in this league now, for instance, and they all have had moments of great tradition and strong programs. And so any given year, you could have a cluster where, 2 or 3 of the better teams are in a certain pod, but that's going to, over time, the law of averages will kick in. And we have access to so many metrics now, whether it be Ken Palm or the net score or, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of objective ways to rank teams when it comes to postseason tournaments and that kind of stuff that doesn't require the head-to-head. Even though the traditionalists and all of us would love that head-to-head data point, we can't diminish the student-athlete experience to a place where we're just chasing head-to-heads, and there was a much cleaner way to schedule and not take near as much of their time.
Wren, I know you've given us a lot of time. When you moved to West Virginia and took over that job, which we're thrilled for you, I mean, it's not been the greatest, whatever, how many months it's been. You had to kind of get involved in some things right from the start. You were ready for that. Did you learn much of that crisis management while working with Mac at Missouri? Can you kind of give us some insight on that?
Yeah. So let me say this first about the job. You do this long enough, and it's like any industry, right? You all are in Texas. The oil and gas. There's been so many booms and busts. And when I was in Missouri, it was always all the big money people in Missouri were farmers, where I was at Northwest Missouri. And they were so tight. And I would always say, like, you're going to have a record year. And they said, yeah, we could have a drought in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we could be in the middle of a drought. And so, they're always kind of planning for it. And that's kind of the way it is in athletics. I mean, Baylor had a stretch there where they had a lot of really hard times. And sometimes when it's kind of your turn, that's just the way that it is. You have to deal with it. And so what I have told people is when I was assessed in this job, what I was the most worried about was the family aspect. Heather and I are both from Oklahoma. We had lived in Texas. When we were there at UNT, we were within 3 hours of every family member we had. So my big concern in moving here was, how is this going to impact my family? And I will tell you that even though this is further from home, with my family has loved it. I've made this comment, and I always knock on wood as I say it, but I've not come home to tears one time yet. So, that part has been a joy and a pleasure, and the people here have welcomed us with open arms. And so, the job, eventually, those things we'll get corrected what we can correct, and we'll deal with the curveballs that are thrown to us. And we've been thrown a few, but, that if you're going to cash those checks, you have to be ready to do the job. In terms of just managing through that, I would say of all the things that I learned from Mac, communication and leadership during a crisis is probably at the top of that list. And, he is so disciplined in his approach to those situations, so methodical in his communication tree and in the way that he assesses things. He has most of that stuff written out and put in the binder after binder, and I used to make fun of him for it. And I will tell you that of all things I learned from him, and I've learned a lot, and he's a dear, dear friend and mentor. That's probably at the top of the list, and we certainly, that was a rough year that we had at Missouri, but he and I really forged a friendship while we were there, and I learned so much from him during that time, and I'm thankful for it. Now, not so thankful that I won't give him a hard time. I've tried to call him 3 times today to just tell him he is fake news because of the numbers he threw out in distributions yesterday on your show, and you all had to correct it today. So he's ducking my call. He knows what I want, but I'm just going to tell him you're fake news and hang up. That's my plan when he answers.
Okay, now we started the show with that, Wren, and Mac may have been thinking we were talking about a different part of the entrance into the Big 12. So stop. Don't do that. But I know you will, even if we say no. But yeah, we did. We had to start off and kind of make sure.
We've never had to do a retraction before. It's something we're pretty proud of because we don't we're not trying to get things first. We just kind of repeated what he said, but I went back and listened to it, and there could have been some definite clarification on both sides of us going, all right, you said everybody, but when? Because we just kind of left that detail out, and he said it, and we just straight ran through it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, good deal. That's what he said. Let's go.
Yeah. Paul wants to work in the Baylor athletic department.
Well, I've already told Kevin Gall to get his boss in line. Stop letting your guys just throw out random numbers on radio shows, man.
Oh my God! And I talked to Kevin a little bit earlier today as well about what you were discussing. Hey, good luck, and it's amazing. This conference continues to blossom and gets bigger, and the networks are behind it, and it's just the start. And now everyone's worried about what's going to happen with the ACC or Cal Stanford or SMU or whatever. We appreciate your time, and you gave us a bunch of it. And have a very great the rest of your Wednesday and the rest of the week.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And let me just say this about the Big 12. You think about where things were, and I was at North Texas, where they were 2 years ago, and where it is today. And we can be disappointed about what's happening in college athletics and the collapse of a Power 5 conference and the way that the geography is getting spread out. But if you're a fan of the Big 12 and a fan of an institution in the Big 12, you have to be celebrating that you went from being in a very precarious position to a position of strength and a position that I think puts us all in a great space moving forward. And I will say this not just because Mac is a friend of mine, but Mac and Linda have both provided great leadership during this time. I mean, Linda is the chair of the CEOs. I mean, she has done a phenomenal job, and Mac has as much or more respect as anybody in that AD room. And so Baylor has certainly been a huge part of shaping the future of the Big 12, and we're excited to be in this together. And there's going to be a lot of bright days ahead.
Thank you, Wren. Great stuff. Classy as well. Thank you for your time, Wren Baker, Director of Athletics at West Virginia. Work with Mac at Missouri.